Asta, Yuno, Yami, and Nacht, 4 of the strongest characters in Black Clover, just got absolutely steamrolled by the King of Devils Lucifero when he finally decided to get serious in this one. If you enjoy our Black Clover content, drop a like to let us and the algorithm know, and subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on if you have not already. Now, since Asta and Yuno had finally gotten back up, Asta on account of Sekre sealing his pain, Yami would call on both of them to help mix things up a bit. Because for as impressive as their full power mana zone combination spell happened to be, between Yami's dark magic and Noct's shadow magic, it obviously was not gonna cut it. At least not enough, because funny enough, only Yami and Asta have been able to cut this guy, but more on that later. Lucifero stood in the midst of this dark and shadow spell as a whole slew of, for lack of better words, shadow clones of Noct and Yami advanced towards him, but Lucifero decided to take these guys seriously. Even though they had only been able to give him the equivalent of paper cuts so far, it was enough for him to forego his ego and acknowledge them, which is just about the worst thing a final boss can do, because being underestimated is usually a good way to secure a sneaky win. Suddenly, the mana zone would begin to crumble and fade. Lucifero simply extended his hand and everything was being destroyed, which is pretty crazy because these are some of the most powerful and rare sorts of magic at play here. Although, I mean, Lucifero's power, gravity magic, is a fundamental aspect of our reality. Even zero gravity as we know it isn't no gravity at all. It's a power that will always exist and be present in some capacity, thus making it really difficult to counteract even in the face of composite magic between darkness and shadows. Because for as prevalent as those two things may be, they may cease to be in the presence of enough light. Not to mention, they're not inherently damaging powers like gravity may be. And that's what makes these Supreme Devils so terrifying. We've got Lucifero with gravity, Beelzebub with space, Megecula with curses, and maybe this is jumping the gun a bit, but more than likely time as well. All of which being some pretty deadly things. This spell from Noct and Yami is one of the most powerful examples of combination magic we have ever seen in the series, and was already destroyed by Lucifero in a matter of seconds. Yami would yell out to the others that they needed to end things quickly before the King of Devils had the chance to completely destroy them all. The reality being that with each and every attempt, they were getting weaker. And I don't just mean that in the sense of damage, because if it wasn't for the help of others intervening, Asta, Yuno, and Noct would have already been dead. The real issue was that Lucifero was getting used to them. They were constantly pulling out all the stops and giving it their all, while Lucifero had only just begun to take things seriously. The longer this fight takes, the less likely it is that they will ever be able to win. Asta was still terribly injured from being stomped out by Lucifero previously, so he definitely could not afford to hold back and would decide to immediately use his Devil Union mode. But unfortunately, it looks like Asta still hasn't brought the power to that next level, as he was still working within a 5-minute time limit, and at this point only had 2 minutes left on the clock. So again, they really needed to wrap things up. And Libe was all for it. What he wanted to hear more than anything else was revenge. Revenge for his and Asta's mother, which I'm still waiting for him to bring up, or maybe Lucifero might just recognize Libe and divulge that information himself. I mean, thus far, with each and every one of these Supreme Devil fights, there has been a backstory related revelation. Noct versus the twins gave us information on his brother Morgan's death. Yuno versus Zenon gave us Yuno's second grimoire situation on top of Zenon's backstory, and Noelle versus Megecula gave us her mother and Nozelle's sad past, so I'm gonna need that mother reveal for Asta pronto. But speaking of Asta, he would use his Devil Union mode here, but there was a problem. According to Noct, Asta's anti-magic was overflowing, and doing so to the point where they could not maintain their mana zone around him, which now reveals the biggest issue with this oh so powerful form of his. It is terrible for teamwork situations. As it is right now, Asta is pretty much the embodiment of anti-magic in this form, and so any magic in a close enough proximity to him is deleted virtually instantaneously. Although with just how much mana Lucifero has, it's not so immediate in his case. Asta in this form simply does not play well with others, and in situations like these, that is pretty horrible, and only becomes more and more of a problem as things progress. Asta would then very quickly use his Demon Slasher Infinite Slash, the very same move he used to cut the Lucifero blob monster previously, the move that cemented the fact that he had surpassed Noct and Yami, at least in regards to how they were before, mind you, because of course Yami is now closer to being a devil than a human at this point, with a newfound excess of magical power and a new sword forged from William's World Tree magic. But man, Lucifero dodged his attack and made his way to Asta's side before the motion even concluded. He would reel back his fist while letting Asta know that he might just be the most dangerous one of them all, but he was also the one who would be easiest to kill. Which definitely checks out because Asta wasn't really able to evade the guy without the assistance of others, and this time would be no different, as to save him would be Captain Yami, yet again placing his sword on the flesh of Lucifero. But unlike last time where he managed to cut him a bit, Lucifero was serious now and seemingly far more fortified, as not even a scratch would be left. From which point Yami's left arm would suddenly be broken, and in the proximity of the devil things would only get worse, so Yuno took it upon himself to relocate Yami elsewhere, from which point Yami would recognize that Yuno now has two grimoires and thank him. Now Noct and Yuno were mostly playing support roles in this fight, but being the more intelligent halves of their respective duos would begin to further strategize and weigh their options. As far as Noct was concerned, Asta and Yami were the only ones who could take down the King of Devils, but he would have to wonder how well Yami would even fare at this point with only one arm available. Then you'd have Yuno, who was still pretty beat up, and unfortunately again, because of how Asta's Devil Union mode works, Yuno couldn't have his star magic follow and help him out because Asta's anti-magic would destroy it too. And so at this point they would both begin to wonder who they should bet on here, and for whatever reason we would again be reminded of a Dramalak's presence, and they're just hanging out and watching the show from here. And at that, my fascination with this figure only continues to grow with each and every chapter. Now what Addy appears to be sitting on here is a bit of floating debris, what may very well be on account of lacking gravitational pressure causing the rocks to float, which is to say that Lucifero might just have some degree of reverence to this devil that we do not yet understand. I mean, he previously asked for Addy's assistance and was denied, a declaration which fundamentally undermines pretty much all prior understanding of devils in Black Clover and their hierarchy. But with a very simple motion, Lucifero would cause sudden harm to Noct's right arm, just as he had to Yami's left one, which Asta, using his anti-magic, would get rid of as quickly as possible to avoid any serious damage being done. But in no time at all, knowing the very same move would not work on him, Lucifero landed a direct kick onto Asta's kneecap, as his entire leg would go on to twist in a terrible way. He was about to finish Asta off with a punch to the cranium, but just then, Yuno, with his star and wind magic in tandem, would take the hit in Asta's stead, which absolutely broke his spirit dive apart. And it was at this point that Yuno would declare that he would be placing his bets on the one his Captain William was willing to bet on, the man who wielded William's sword, Yami. Which, considering his history with Asta, may feel a bit strange, but hey, I guess you gotta put your faith in your captain at the end of the day. Yuno would place a star to Lucifero's left and a star to Lucifero's right. However, to Lucifero, it didn't matter where the attack would come from because either way, he would kill him. Which again stands to emphasize the danger of Lucifero getting used to fighting these guys. And from there, the narrative would call to question who of these two would win in this situation. Obviously regarding Lucifero to be a devil, and interestingly enough, Yuno to be an angel. Yuno's spirit dive form of course boasts a halo of sorts, and taking a look at Noelle's too, there is a halo there as well. That being said, I doubt the spirit related equivalent of a devil host would be labeled an angel, but perhaps spirits themselves may be a resultant of angelic powers at play, similarly to how demons are a resultant of devilish powers at play. For such diametrically opposed entities, at least on paper, it would make sense for there to be a ton of parallels between the two. I mean, even now we still don't know all too much about devils, and in my mind, there is seriously no better time to have that stuff elaborated upon than while we are facing off against the literal king of devils, so I will definitely be looking forward to more information on that front. Fans for years now have been speculating about the existence of angels in Black Clover, as with devilish depictions, angelic ones are to be expected. Maybe this right here isn't exactly what fans may have had in mind, but it is what it is, and hopefully subscribing to the channel with notifications on is on your mind, along with our brand new channel, Plot Armor Comics, which within the span of less than a month, managed to hit 10,000 subscribers after only 5 videos. If you enjoy stories from Marvel and DC, make sure to check us out, but when it comes to bringing you some of the best Black Clover content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.